welcome who is joining to our event. My name is Aurelija Valeikienė. I am coordinator of Iglo Higher Education Group with Ragnhild Solvi-Berg. Yes, so, and another thing what we would love to share for house rules to introduce, so that the slides will be shared afterwards, because we have the allowance and we have agreement on this from all our speakers. So thank you very much for that. And at the beginning, I would love to start from very short movie on what is that automatic recognition. And this was it was introduced on this September. It was very short overview, and now for a longer overview on this topic, I would like to invite Lucie Trojanova, who is Policy Officer from European Commission, Directorate General for Education and Culture. Lucie, the floor is yours, and we are looking to hear more about the overview on this topic.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with you, and I'm looking for the later on discussions, because I believe that we are little, but it will allow us to discuss even further. So without further ado, I've prepared a short overview of the automatic recognition and, let's say, the policy context. I'll just take you through what has happened since the November 2018, and so I'll tell you where we stand right now and what are the future steps. And then I'm happy to discuss or reply to any questions you will have. So I'll try to share the presentation. Please let me know if it works. Just a second. So okay, so now I do not see it.
The
green button on the bottom.
The bottom.
It doesn't show anymore. It did show previously, but now I do not see it. But if you give me
okay, no problem.
Because
I can share for you.
You can share it too, right? But it's
yes.
a shame because I did have it. But let me try.
And you've tried it worked before, that's true.
Yeah, it did.
Yes.
Let me try one more time. Then I have it.
Okay, good, great.
So I'm sharing it right now. Please let me know if you do see it.
Yes, it's working perfect. Yes, Lucie.
Fantastic. So so this is just the first slide. So once again, my name is Lucie Trojanova, and I work as a policy officer at the B1, the Higher Education Unit in DG EAC, and I do take care, among others, of the file that focuses on the recognition of qualifications. Okay, so does it work? Okay, it's very slow, so please do bear with me when I change the slides. So as I mentioned right at the beginning, I first would like to tell you sort of the policy context, or just to give you the overview. As you may know, or I think you all know, that the academic recognition of diplomas and periods of study is one of the explicit objectives of the European cooperation in education. It's part of the treaty, and it's within the Article 165. Further, after 2017 and the Gothenburg Summit, the Council recommendation on automatic recognition has been adopted by all member states. And we know that the implementation of the Council recommendation is essential for other EU priorities within the higher education area. So we are looking at the implementation of the Council recommendation as an essential building block within the European education area. We know that it's crucial for enabling and increasing the student mobility and especially making the new Erasmus program success. And recently, we have also highlighted the importance of the automatic recognition in the Council resolution on strategic framework for European cooperation in education and training towards achieving the European education area. But of course, if I take it from the larger angle, we also see the importance of the automatic recognition within the Bologna process. So just to mention the Rome communique, where again, it's been highlighted that the automatic recognition is one of the objectives of the Bologna process, and it's already been mentioned during the Paris communique 3 years ago. So we see that the automatic recognition is sort of popping out from different angles, and the implementation of the Council recommendation is very important for the implementation of other European Commission's priority within the higher education. Yes, so what is the automatic recognition? But I think you all know that, but we do have different definitions. So I have taken, for example, one of the older definitions from the Pathfinder group on automatic recognition, which was one of the bases for drafting the Council recommendation on automatic recognition. So according to which the automatic recognition of degree leads to the automatic right of an applicant holding a qualification of certain level to be considered for entry to the labor market or program for further study in the next level in any other EEA country. So here you see the context of the Bologna, so it's larger than just the EU, and this is the year 2008. And then I think the other definition is much more aligned with the definition which you can find in the Council recommendation, according to which the automatic recognition means that there are no separate recognition procedures in place for holders of foreign qualifications from EU member states to access further learning. And I will not read over the exact definition which you can find in the Council recommendation. But I think what is the most important in order to understand what we mean by the automatic recognition is that when we are talking about the automatic recognition, we are talking about the recognition on system level. And then that we are talking about recognition that does not include a separate recognition procedure. So the qualification should be looked from the point of view of the system. So bachelor equals to bachelor, master equals to master, and also should be verified if the qualification is legit. So if it's not a degree or diploma else. So those are the most important, let's say, issues that are attached to the automatic recognition as according to the Council recommendation. We also do have to make a difference between, or a distinction between what is access and admission to higher education. Because the Council recommendation does not give an automatic right to be to the admission of higher education study. This is very much within the competency of each member state. So what is the admission procedure or requirements? That's mostly the higher education institution that decides. Also, when we receive qualifications coming from third countries, then again, we will, or if you look at the Lisbon Recognition Convention, that is the main legal document for the recognition of qualification coming from outside of the EU. So I'll move the slide. Yes, okay. So where do we stand right now? What is the state of play? So I have checked the mobility scorecard in the field of higher education, and according to the scoreboard card, we do have, or there are 9 educational systems within the EU or within the Europe that did sort of admit, or that they say that they do practice automatic recognition of degrees. This is 2018, 2019. We are waiting for the newest results that should come up, I think, in autumn of this year. According to the mobility scoreboard card, we also have 12 countries that report to use or to apply automatic recognition on the basis of bilateral or regional agreements. And I'll get to that a bit of further on what does it mean, basis of bilateral or regional agreement. Also, I think it's interesting to mention that at the time when we are preparing the Council recommendation, we have also looked at the recognition of learning periods abroad and how it works within the mobility of students within the program Erasmus+. So in 2018, 80% or 81.8% of the students said that their qualification or the learning period abroad was recognized automatically. In 2019-2020, we already see that there is a slight difference, slight augmentation in the percentage. Of course, it's not 100%, which we are aiming for, but there is a slight difference. So there is still work to be done within the recognition of qualifications and within the recognition of learning periods abroad. Regarding the considerable work that still needs to be done on the level of the member states, the European Commission is very much aware of this, and thus the European Commission tries to help or encourage and support the work of the member states and of the ENIC NARIC centers. And we do that through the funding, through the Erasmus Plus funding, and mainly through the NARIC call, which is every second year the European Commission publishes the NARIC call with the main objectives. The last one, which is still ongoing, was of course the implementation of the automatic recognition, and the new call will be published in, I think, in spring 2022 with the objectives of the recognition, and I believe the major objective will be implementation of the automatic recognition. So, and then the European Commission, of course, helps with the policies, drafting, and peer support. So those are the main, just to explain to you how what is the European Commission role and how it sort of tries to encourage the implementation of the automatic recognition, which is within the hand of member states. So on the next slide, as I already mentioned, that there are different models of the implementation of automatic recognition. So we have identified 4 models. So there is a model which is, we call it de facto automatic recognition. For example, used, I think, in the Netherlands. Then we do have the legal binding unilateral list of countries. This is used in, for example, in Portugal, but also in other countries. And then we have bilateral and multilateral treaties, among which we do have the Baltic Benelux agreement, and we will hear more about that. And then we have the non-legal bilateral and multilateral agreements. So, so there are different ways of implementing the Council recommendations. The different models can be implemented or applied simultaneously. But what we know, or what we have realized, is that for the implementation of the automatic recognition, something has to be put in place. So what helps is, for example, the implementation of the Lisbon Recognition Convention, which is the case of all EU member states, but the Greece, which has not ratified the convention. So then we do know that the 3-cycle system of the higher education with the reference to European qualification framework and the EHA framework does help also considerably. And of course, the qualification quality assurance system that should be also fully implemented within the national system is also another criteria that should be in place for the automatic recognition. But we have also realized that certain higher education institutions do also use the automatic recognition without requiring actually former criteria. So, and then I have sort of pinpoint out the challenges that most of the member states do put forward or tell us about while implementing the Council recommendation. We already know that we do have the tools that should be in place in order that the automatic recognition is implemented. So we do have the Council recommendation, we do have the Bologna and the EU transparency tools, among which European qualification framework, the Europass platform, diploma supplement, ECTS. We also have the standards and guidelines for quality assurance. We have the Lisbon Recognition Convention, and we have the Erasmus Charter. So we do have the tools for the automatic recognition to be the reality. However, the problems still persist. Why do they persist, or what are the issues that have been put forward by many member states? So it's the non-implementation of the Bologna tools. So we do know that certain member states, they still do not implement fully the Bologna transparency tools. And on this, we are working parallel with the Bologna process, to which the European Commission is a full member. We also know that there is a difficulties in regards of the recognition of virtual or blended learning, or short mobility term learning. And then we also know that the recognition of prior learning, or the RPL, is also done by the case-by-case scenario. So it's also very complicated to implement automatic recognition. Yes, and then just for your own interest, I thought it may be interesting sort of to talk with you about this. So we have also prepared a case study of different recognition scenarios that have been put forward by European alliances. So the European University Alliances have put forward, for example, the difficulties they do have to overcome while recognizing qualifications. So we have realized that in certain member states, for example, the diploma supplement is not fully implemented. We have also realized that many alliances are still battling in certain countries, for example, with the recognition of online learning and virtual mobility. The same thing, as I've already mentioned, is the problems of the recognition of prior learning, or, for example, the recognition of the micro-credentials. That is sort of like the music of the very near future, but we do know that in certain cases there is a sort of an automatic recognition. In certain member states there is none, and in others there is a partial one. Yes, so I'll share with you this table just so you can read it if you feel like reading it. I have more information, and I think this is the end of my presentation. I've tried to make it more, let's say, practical or more up to date, and something which we can use for further discussion if you wish so. Yes, and happy to answer or discuss any further. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Lucie, for a comprehensive overview on automatic recognition topic and what is the role of European Commission in this topic. And please, all the members, take your notes and questions, and we will ask after the 3 presentations. Okay, so just have it in mind. You can also write in chat if you have the question, so you can write in the chat also. And as Lucie mentioned in her presentation, that everything is within the hands between the members. So I would love to introduce our another speaker, and let's listen to Marie-Anne, who will Marie-Anne Persoons, International Policy Advisor at the Flemish Department of Education and Training of the Flemish Ministry of Education, who will present for us the successful example of automatic recognition that was signed between Benelux and Baltic countries. And Marie-Anne, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I will try to share my screen.
Yes.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Perfect, but I have to go back and I don't know.
Yes, from the beginning. So just like, I think,
Oh,
yes. Oh, great. Yes, we see it from the beginning.
You see it? Okay.
Yes.
I hope. Good. So yes, we can maybe immediately go into the matter. What is the origin? Well, we had, first of all, legal instruments, agreements that existed either in the Benelux and in the Baltic cooperation that started with Benelux decision in 2015, and then shortly after there were other initiatives. What is very important to underscore is that both regions were already in contact when they both from their side were working at their mutual agreement. But they first started in their region before reaching out to the other. I also have to say that both regions were in close cooperation or in close contact with the European Commission when they were writing the first draft of the recommendation on automatic recognition, because of course we were quite concerned that the definition of academic recognition would go in the direction of what we wanted to explore. And what we wanted to explore was in fact what was already agreed by the ministers of in charge of higher education in 2013 in Bucharest, in the context of the Bologna process, that work would be undertaken on automatic recognition, and automatic recognition in the sense of a complete exemption of procedures. What is the basis? The basis is, let's say, the acquis of the Bologna process, of the EU cooperation, where a lot of conceptual work has indeed been done. And all this was embedded in a mutual trust between the countries of the regions and of the larger European higher education area. And so we, from the beginning, we knew at both sides, and when we worked together, that we would not stop with the two regions, but that we saw this as a kind of contribution to the rest of the European higher education area, and that we would try to do a kind of pilot, see how far we could get, to have more legal guarantee than what already existed. I don't know how I have to go. Yeah. So, what is this treaty and what is it not? This treaty has its limits, and that's for a purpose, because otherwise we take on board a lot of extra difficult elements, and we believed very strongly that by confining ourselves to a few key building blocks, there would be a kind of spillover effect to other areas where recognition matters. So first of all, the definition of automatic recognition, to which Lucie already hinted. So it means not procedural, no procedures anymore, not even a short procedure, no speed procedure, no computer procedure, nothing, no procedure, but an established legal right. And this is new. There is not a single practice where a citizen can go to court in order to complain about the fact that the recognition has not been granted. It's generic recognition, not yet specific. With generic, we mean the level of the degree, and the specific discipline is not in the scope. But again, we know that there can be spillover effects. We saw that in our own region, that once you have established the trust on the generic level, that it helps also the specific recognition. It's academic recognition, not professional, so we didn't want to get in the jungle of the EU regulations on professional recognition. We confined ourselves to the academic recognition, but so it's in fact a qualification as a basis for further career, further study trajectory. Nonetheless, we know from the experience in our two regions that there are important positive spillover effects of facilitating specific recognition and transition to the world of work. This is not the focus of this treaty, it's not discussed, but it could have this effect. I don't know. Okay. What is it? It's not a revolution, not at all. In fact, we put the acquis, which was already acquired at the European level via the European Union, via the Council of Europe, and more globally via UNESCO. We put this acquis on recognition together in a coherent legal framework. It's a reaffirmation, of our political determination to contribute to the Bologna process. It's no substitution of earlier legal instruments. We have not the pretension to say that we are going to replace the Lisbon Recognition Convention. For instance, we still will need fair procedures where automatic recognition is not possible. But the key word is the trust. It's not that all these acquis and all these instruments that we build on are a kind of checklist. In a certain sense, they are for accession or what have you, but the trust is the most important thing. It comes. It's a trust in the other countries' recognized degrees, and it's a trust in the validity of the instruments of the European and international cooperation. But it's not the other way around. Without trust, you can have 1001 instruments that you comply with. There needs to be a kind of willingness and a kind of trust to jump in the water altogether, and that's extremely important. What are the accession criteria? Well, you will see that there are in fact 3 building blocks: recognition, quality assurance, and transparency, which are, as we know, in a triangular relation. And we know that the last decades there has been done a lot of conceptual work in the different organizations that are involved in international recognition, in the European Union, European Commission, Council of Europe, UNESCO, on how this triangular relation works. So what should you do if you want to accede to the treaty? There is the ratification of the Lisbon Recognition Convention, and that's very handy because that includes the diploma supplement that comes from there. There is the adherence to the European standards and guidelines for quality assurance in the European higher education area. which a country can prima facie prove via the membership of its quality assurance body in the European register, but maybe there are other ways. And then the reference higher education to the qualifications framework of the European higher education area, the older one, and then the European qualifications framework for lifelong learning, which has the advantage, both of them, that it links to a credit system based on ECTS, and that's then the block for transparency. And then the last slide. I really have trouble. Huh? Yeah. So countries that are interested in accession, they can contact the Secretariat General of the Benelux Union, and they provide the Secretariat for the treaty. I've put the two contact persons, Stepan Paviljan, who is the reference for the legal issues and who was in fact also the author of the first draft of the treaty, and Lotte Dijking, who oversees the document, the whole dossier. The text of the treaty can of course not be changed with accession, and also it's not possible to have partial accession, that you, for instance, say, okay, I agree with Article 1, but not with Article 3. So it's wholesale. But once countries are acceded, they are in the driving seat together with us on equal footing. And of course, the Benelux countries and the Baltic states remain also at your disposal for further information should you have to. And I will stop on this.
Thank you very much, Marianne, for this great presentation. Now it's really very clear that that it should be mutual trust between two regions, between the countries that are signing the treaty, and of course mutual trust in each other's higher education system. So, but how to build this trust? So I would like to ask the third speaker, Aurelija Valeikienė, Deputy Director of Lithuanian Centre for Quality Assessment in Higher Education and the Head of Lithuanian ENIC NARIC Association. So Aurelija, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia. I will be sharing my presentation. I hope that you see it.
Yes,
okay.
We see it. Yes.
Thank you. Very good. The work in implementation of automatic recognition is a long path, and I will highlight in my presentation what are the building blocks of this path and how do we get there where we are. And of course, the roots of all this are in the Lisbon Recognition Convention, signed in 1997, and support of this legal instrument, the only legally binding instrument of the Bologna process, is in the Secretariats, the Council of Europe and UNESCO, and also the European Commission, and the leading instruments for the networks, the ENIC network and the NARIC network, supporting implementation of this convention, the leadership being in the ENIC Bureau and the NARIC Advisory Board, and also the Lisbon Recognition Convention Committee. There has been a lot of work done in issuing recommendations on how to apply recognition, what it means to assess joint degrees, or how to look at other complicated cases. This whole body of knowledge was gradually built. And it should not be underestimated how we get to the automatic recognition, especially since we are now talking in terms of the European region. But looking at the global perspective, we know that the Global Recognition Convention was signed and that there are other regional conventions of Africa, of Asia, of Latin America, and these are quite different things. The situation that we have in Europe is quite unique, and I would like to underscore that this is really a huge work of all the colleagues done in this relation. And the political will to proceed on this path towards automatic recognition is really essential. And when we look at the Bologna process, as Lucie said, it was underscored in several agreements made by ministers and communicated widely to the public, and also on the regional level, the steps that were taken between the Benelux countries and between the Baltic countries. And just to give a very short example of the Baltic countries, the automatic recognition agreement that was signed in 2018 is really maybe a fourth or fifth treaty that was signed among the Baltic countries. There were other treaties preceding this, not automatic recognition treaties, other treaties, but they were small steps on the road towards this overarching agreement that we take trust in each other's system. And of course, the political will on the European Union level embedded in the Council recommendation, which is supported by the commitment to revise not to revise, but to review our standing and to report where we are in relation to our political goals are very important things. What it means to effectively implement the Lisbon Recognition Convention and where does all this trust comes from? It really is on the basis of the 5 key principles that demonstrate good implementation of the Lisbon Recognition Convention. And we start with the fair assessment of all applicants who apply for recognition, that we do not deny this to people, and that we have systems for recognition of all types of qualifications. This might sound simple, but unfortunately that's not the case when we take a closer look to the country situations. Another very important aspect is really recognition unless there is no substantial difference, because there are differences in the systems despite of all Bologna reforms implemented among the countries. And just to give a small example of Lithuania, I can say that Lithuania was among the last countries to introduce the short cycle qualifications in our system. They are not yet fully functional, but this is just an example that systems are evolving. And we really should keep in mind that there would always be small discrepancies or whatever. But what matters is the big picture. And the legislation should really encourage looking at the learning outcomes rather than other elements of the qualification, in particular of the program content, since we know that there are still bad practices where some sort of homologization or equivalence is sought, but this is really not about what we are talking when we are talking about automatic recognition. Of course, negative cases have to be substantiated, and we are well aware that in case of the ENIC NARIC offices, non-recognition cases would make small percentages, but there really should be grounds explained for the applicants in case those situations are established. And appeals should be made possible. And those appeals should be not only to the courts, but also to the pre-court institutions, because we know that going to the courts is costly and time-consuming, so there has to be more effective approach to this. And where do we get trust into implementation of those 5 principles? It's really in the common monitoring. And there are 2 types of monitoring. There is monitoring of the Lisbon Recognition Convention, one report issued and another report underway, and also a very well-established instrument monitoring between the Bologna process countries. And here you see the cover pages of the 2 reports that are most recent. They provide a lot of information on where we are in terms of recognition, in addition to the student opinions gathered by the European Student Union and also the national student unions. On the level of the ENIC NARIC networks, it's very important that there are functioning academic information and recognition centers. These are the primary drivers behind the recognition services. Of course, we know that for admission into higher education institutions themselves are in the driving seat. But on the country level, the centralized information provision and development of the good practices are really in the hands of the ENIC NARIC centers. And here you see the print screens of some of the tools, most importantly, the ENIC NARIC net, the website that includes all the countries and that has a lot of useful information, including the special tools that were developed by the joint effort of those centers. And I mean the European Area for Recognition Manual for ENIC NARIC centers, which is in the e-format, and also the special version of the manual for higher education institutions. And we are that advanced in this that we already have the 3rd version of this manual. This also attests to the fact that recognition practice is really evolving. What is also pertinent is proper implementation of other tools. And you see here the cover page of the special set of recommendations that pertain to ENIC NARIC centers, to higher education institutions, quality assurance agencies, and also stakeholders. And they deal with implementation of the European standards and guidelines for the proper recognition. And they provide ideas how proper recognition could be supported by quality assurance to that end. This slide perhaps is the most important in my whole presentation. And here is the list of those instruments that are at the background of automatic recognition. So we talk about not only signing of the Lisbon Recognition Convention, but proper implementation. And from my previous slides and notes, you can already have an idea what it means, proper implementation. So just legal accession to the LRC is really just a prerequisite, but further work needs to be done. And there needs to be a solid basis that we are on the same page when it comes to adherence to the LRC. Also, quality assurance, as Lucie and Marianne also said, is at the heart. So we are talking about quality assurance both on the system level, which is supported by the national ministries, by the quality assurance agencies and other national bodies, but also implementation on the higher education institution level. The free cycles and the learning outcomes approach should really be in place by now, but still we do face some challenges on this. but hopefully we are proceeding, and the national qualifications frameworks are supporting us in this implementation of the learning outcomes approach, because it's not a one-time exercise to align the national framework to the two European frameworks, but also keeping up to date and providing reliable information for stakeholders both within the countries and outside the countries. Issuing of diploma supplement in the national language and other widely spoken languages is key, because it provides information on the qualification that is absolutely vital for the recognition. Usage of ECTS, ideally, or in some cases, other credit systems aligned with ECTS is another key feature. And various databases that are available and developed on the country levels, but also the European level. And you see here the ECHAR, the European Register for Quality Assurance of the Trustworthy Quality Assurance Agencies, and their latest product, the DECAR, the Database of External Quality Assurance Results. Of course, this database houses the most recent evaluations, not all the historic evaluations, but gradually with time, hopefully, it provides the one place where external quality assurance results could be found and verified as well. Last but not least, I would like to say some words about implementation of quality assurance of recognition services themselves. And as European standards and guidelines are supported by the review of quality assurance agencies, whether they are aligned to the ESGs and properly implement, so there is another instrument developed jointly by the ENIC NARIC centers, the ESGs for ENIC NARIC centers. The abbreviation for them are SQUARE, the SQUARE standards, and they are available on the ENIC NARIC net, the website. This is so far the voluntary instrument developed by the networks, but gradually becoming popular, and some centers already aligned themselves and analyzed how they implement the best practices in recognition several times, and others are joining. Of course, the latter instrument is voluntary one and not mandatory, but this is also a source for trust in each other approaches to recognition. Now, to expand a little bit what we mean by automatic recognition, definitions were provided by Lucie, and also Marianne mentioned what we mean in our treaty among the Baltic states and the Benelux states. I must say that when we drafted the Baltic Treaty on automatic recognition, we took a long path. We actually had a project where we analyzed each other practices and where we looked in detail how we implement the Bologna instruments. And I think that was a warm-up exercise for ourselves to get accustomed to the idea that we take this bold step and that we commit to the automatic recognition. But this may not necessarily be the case for other countries, hopefully not, because this is really a long path. And I wouldn't say that this is needed in case we have proper implementation of all other instruments, which were mentioned on my previous slides. But what automatic recognition does require is really a shift in mentality and opening up to other higher education systems and other education systems. If we will expand that to also include access qualifications, not only higher education qualifications, maybe this will happen sometimes in the future. The current Benelux and Baltic Treaty is focused on higher education qualifications only, but the EU Council recommendation on automatic recognition also calls for recognition of access qualifications. So there is further potential to expand in this area. And here you see in the chart the 5 elements of the qualification, how we look at each of the qualification. And when we talk about automatic recognition, it's really those darker blocks. It's the level, its quality, and the workload. And for the admission purposes into higher education, the profile and the learning outcomes might matter. And these are not taken automatically. These are not taken for granted. There might be still a need to look into those. So coming to my last slide, when we talk about implementation and what in practice this would mean, we are talking that there is no procedure for the applicants. There would not be a statement issued that this or that qualification is automatically recognized, but we really see a need to build awareness in the public that there is this instrument, that people know their rights, that, for example, they could apply directly. And just to give an example, in Lithuania, we have a common admission system to all higher education institutions. So in practice, holders of qualifications from the Benelux countries and other Baltic countries, they would be able to just upload their documents to this common admission system and have their qualifications processed without us as Lithuanian ENIC NARIC Center issuing any sort of statement on their qualification. When we talk about employers and accepting those higher education qualifications for the labor market, there also needs to be awareness building. In some cases, employers might wish to look at the legitimacy of the awarding body and on the authenticity of qualifications. Some employers we know that would take those matters closer to heart and take precautionary measures. And perhaps we are talking about those institutions which employ civil servants or which work in some highly sensitive sectors for reputation as banks and diplomatic services and other international organizations. Other employers might more rely on just information provided without necessarily verifying. For the ENIC NARIC centers, the basic task remains to develop awareness of the provisions and support implementation of automatic recognition by providing proper information, by referring people to where they need to go to implement their rights to this automatic recognition. And for higher education institutions, they would not need to look at the level, the workload, and the quality of qualification. They may need to look at the profile depending upon the study program to which the applicant is trying to get entrance into, and the learning outcomes if they are fit for the admission into that specific program. And also take into account the authenticity matters related to the qualification. So this is it from my side. And perhaps we are now into the final questions and answers session. Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Aurelia, for this great presentation and for showing us that the big picture matters and that we are on the long path, but at the same time we're building awareness and we are making some shift in our mentality for the opportunity to be together. So we are very welcome now to have the question session. So if you are having any of the question for any of speaker, so you can raise your hand You can raise with the camera, we can see you, or you can raise with Zoom, or you can just write in the chat. So whatever it works for you.
Michael, Gable had one question. I don't know, Michael, if you want to pose it yourself or...
Well, I can do. It was actually to Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, as you mentioned that this might also trigger some developments in the recognition of professional qualifications. Do you see that upcoming, or is there intention from the authorities or to support that and facilitate that?
I think we have been very careful because we wanted the strongest possible way of cooperating being a legal instrument that creates a right to the citizen. When we go to professional recognition, there is, of course, the whole range of regulated professions where the European Union has a full competency to regulate. And we didn't want to compete or to have something that could contradict the EU regulations. On the other hand, when you come to academic recognition, there the EU has no possibility to have a binding legal instrument. They can, of course, have recommendations, they can nudge academic recognition via funding, via projects, etc., etc. So it's in that area that an intergovernmental cooperation is necessary. Not the méthode communautaire, but the intergovernmental cooperation where you can go a step further and really have a legal instrument like a treaty. Of course, the Council of Europe and UNESCO also have possibilities of legal instruments that after ratification are binding. But what we hear, and in theory, they could have conventions on automatic recognition, but I don't think they will easily find all the countries on board for this. So in fact, we had a kind of coalition of the willing that said, okay, there is a need for academic recognition and we are going to fulfill that need. But there are, for the time being, no real plans for professional recognition due to the complexities that I explained. But we see that especially for employment in the public sector, this abolishment of procedures helps citizens very much.
And if I may have another question, is this going to be monitored, the Baltic Benelux agreement, regarding the impact that it has, or?
I look at Aurelia. Are we going to do that?
We are still to decide among the countries. We have an upcoming meeting to discuss in greater detail, and we involve lawyers regarding that matter.
Good, thanks.
Other questions? Huh? Who are the signatories, I see?
May I pose a question as well, please? Thank you so much to all three of you for very interesting presentations. This is, of course, quite a lot of technicalities within this this topic, which makes it a bit it's really very useful, I find, to have these introductions to also see a bit where the well, both the intentions and also what the kind of different challenges that are, and also what you can and not use. So I think it's very interesting to see that, of course, you remove the legal barriers, but still there are higher education institutions are in the main seat, if I understand correctly, to approve the students to certain study programs and not. And I wanted to ask you if you have had a lot of feedback from the higher education institutions or from the students' union and the different stakeholders in your countries, how they look upon this this treaty until now, at least.
Can I say something? Yes. I think when we were preparing the decision, it was not a treaty, the decision of the Benelux, we were very much pushed by the rectors' conferences, by the student organizations to do this. And especially the students had high expectations, which we could not completely fulfill because it was only generic recognition and not specific. But as it helped greatly to improve also the specific recognition, we see that, of course, when the news came that we were preparing to do this with other regions, and then that it became concrete with the Baltic region, there was great enthusiasm. So I think they even, in some countries, they even pushed the government to go quickly.
If I may also add, I remember some years ago at one European forum, the former president of the European Student Union standing at the podium and addressing the audience, and that was a mixed audience of very many participants. He simply said, "We want automatic recognition, full stop." And I think this says a lot.
Thank you so much. I think I'm from Norway, and I think the challenges we have now for the recognition issues are mostly in the professional educations, actually, especially within the health professions, and that's not the ENIC NARIC to approve for, but that's where at least the ones that reach the newspapers and the public debates are, of course, in those cases. But I think this is already very helpful. If I can have a second question, and anyone else who wants to pose a question, please raise your hands. Whether you have already, since the 14th of September, been approached by other regions or other countries who want to join your work?
If I may say, yes, there are informal inquiries already.
Yeah, there were already a lot of inquiries before we were there. But of course, we launched the invitation officially on the 27th of September, when we had our festive launching. And yeah, we see that countries are interested, which, as Aurelia said, created the need for us to meet, because we have to know what we are going to do. But as I said in my presentation, if some country exceeds, they are with us in the driving seat. It's not that we will always be on top of it from the moment that somebody exceeds. They are also in the group. They also accompany the whole process of new accessions, etc., etc. But we have still a lot of work to do, and we are a bit overwhelmed by the success, or at least the curiosity. Thank you.
And just to add to Marianne, the signatures are committed, but each country has its own legal ratification procedure, which has to be completed within the country. So in terms of the legal situation, the process has to be first completed between our regions, and then other countries may join. And of course, the procedure has to be clearly established and communicated to all others. So We are working on this.
Yesterday we received the legal advice. I don't know, really, if you read it.
Yes.
So in fact, we can already ask for accession, but of course, when somebody exceeds the national legislation will, in most of the countries, require that afterwards there is a kind of formalization in terms of a ratification. But there is absolutely no obstacle to start.
Well, thank you very much for your answers. And that's what I've heard, that those inquiries in these countries that wanted to join, so still there are a lot of homework to do. So do we have more questions? I don't see any raised hands. So then I'd like to also to ask our three speakers, because we still have a few more minutes for our discussion. So as we have the representatives from different countries here, so which main message you wanted that they will take away from this discussion? And this is for each of the speakers. Lucie, you can start.
Yeah, thank you. It's a quite tricky question, I must say. But I think what I wish them to take back with them, it's of course that the European Commission is here to help them, to help the member states, and it's ready to do so, as I mentioned, through projects, peer support, encouraging peer support and peer learning. Another project, as I mentioned already, will be published in spring 2022. So I do encourage you to, or your member states, or where you're from, to take part in this call, because it will be interesting. So to be active within it, because it's a way of sort of getting further. I also would like to encourage you to further to cooperate within the Bologna process, because it goes hand in hand. It's the European education area and the European higher education area, as mentioned on various occasions. What is the skeleton of the implementation of the automatic recognition is, of course, to have implemented the transparency tools mentioned by Aurelia, Marianne. So sort of go back to the basic, what we have there already, try and use it. I think this is sort of the way forward. And that would be it. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Lucie, for this engagement and inspiration for other countries to join. Aurelia and Marie-Anne, would you like to add something for the representatives from different countries and engage them, inspired to join?
I certainly agree with what Lucie said. It is there, just use it, and you have your automatic recognition. But maybe the basic message are more like the key word is trust. Just trust each other. There is enough there to jump. We have talked so many years already about academic recognition. Our citizens are hoping for it. I can tell you that at the time that I was general coordinator of the Bologna Secretariat, at the time that the Benelux countries were holding it, it was 2007, 2009, most questions from the public that we received were complaints of people that didn't get recognition for the qualifications, and sometimes very tragic situations. And we have to do something for the citizen. Education policies are not for the glory of a minister or what have you. It's really to help graduates to pursue their further career, and it is possible, and we hope that people will join us, and we will address other countries with the same trust as we address to ourselves. So that's all I can say.
I would just like to underscore the importance of usage and implementation of the tools available, because they are really at the heart of the trust. And as I said, it requires the mental disposition to engage in this work and to actually do this, because it does require work. It does not happen just by pure will that, yes, we wish to do so. And what we saw from the past is really important that all stakeholders are contributing to this, because sometimes it's not only up to the ENIC NARIC centers, not up solely to higher education institutions, but it requires a national debate and changing of legislation, changing of approaches. We have heard in the past in many cases that national legislation is holding us back. And since we have so many European best practices and tools developed, I think it's high time to take them and to apply them. So my message to you would be to actually reach out to your stakeholders and talk with them and see how you could contribute to this promotion of automatic recognition and what needs to be done on the country level so that it becomes a reality. Thank you.
So thank you very much for these inspiring messages. I hope that every member will take them out and will bring it to their own stakeholders, and they will contact and reach out the stakeholders. And of course, that's what we've heard, that everything is possible based on trust and transparency. So that was really very great discussion. And if someone still wants to add, we still have a few more minutes. So you are very welcome to add if something is still on top. I know that Ranil, yes, wanted to add something.
Yes, no, I just wanted to very quickly say that we are planning to do a second Iglo working group meeting before Christmas, but we will wait until the call for Erasmus Plus is out mid-November. We're not sure exactly the date, but we will propose a date towards the end of November for that. So we will send around an email to you all next week. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your active participation. And it was really very great to have you all here today on Friday afternoon. And we are wishing you a great weekend ahead and a little bit more rest for this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Nice weekend.
Thank you, all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.